Okay, well, Mubarak says he won't run for re-election. He'll leave in September. Our media is demanding that he leave now. This is strange. I even hear some conservatives out there. Push, push, push. Revolution, revolution. The right place and the right time. A little bit of context here. Then I want to get on. The Age of the Sage. It's a great website. Edmund Burke. Many consider really the greatest mind of modern conservatism, and there are many. He was opposed to the French Revolution. I touched on this the other day. He embraced the American Revolution, but he opposed the French Revolution. He said he opposed it because here we have revolution of doctrine and theoretical dogma, led by a college of armed fanatics for the propagation of the principles of assassination, robbery, fraud, faction, oppression, and impiety. He supported the American Revolution because American society throughout the various colonies was largely a civil society. And it was a revolution seeking the reinstitution of those beliefs. We can't even define what's going on in Egypt today. Even some conservative hosts, they're struggling. They go 6 of this, half a dozen of the other. You don't support a revolution for the sake of supporting a revolution and then pour your own values and beliefs into it and hope that that's what happens. The revolution in France was initially greeted with enthusiasm by many people across Europe. Most of the leaders of Burke's party, the Whig Party. And Burke had championed, as I said, human rights and the American Revolution, the revolutions in Ireland and India. But he was a critic of the French Revolution. And a young Frenchman wrote to Burke towards the late summer of 1789, the year of the first appearance of revolution in France, inquiring of Burke for his lack of enthusiasm. And Burke wrote back, "Permit me to tell you what the freedom is that I love, and that to which I think all men entitled. It is not solitary, unconnected, individual, selfish liberty, as if every man was to regulate the whole of his conduct by his own will. The liberty I mean is social freedom. It is the state of things in which liberty is secured by the equality of restraint, a constitution of things in which the liberty of no one man and no number of men can find means to trespass on the liberty of any person and any description of persons in society. This kind of liberty is indeed but another name for justice, ascertained by wise laws and secured by well-constructed institutions." And Burke famously wrote his great publication, Reflections on the Revolution in France. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because I am stunned at how ignorant so many conservative commentators are. I'm just putting it out there, being honest with you. Mubarak is bad, and whatever else happens can't be as bad, or maybe it will be worse, but so be it. What? Excuse me? 10 days ago, this guy was a valued ally. We were funding his military. 10 days ago, we were relying on this guy, among others, to help bring a broader peace in the Middle East. If he was such a loathsome, intolerable tyrant, then why? Then why would we embrace him and embrace his military and his intelligence services and all the rest for as long as we did? What kind of revolution is this? And by the way, I have no brief for Mr. Mubarak. That's not even my point. It's the recklessness of the commentary that I'm hearing and its incoherence, including from some conservatives. Of course we all hope this works out, just as Burke hoped that the French Revolution would work out. But the terror, the anarchy, the torture, the violence. And how do we define this? The administration has said, according to the LA Slimes, for the first time that it supports a role for groups such as the Muslim Brotherhood, a banned Islamist organization in a reformed Egyptian government. The Muslim Brotherhood, born in 1928, an ally of Adolf Hitler, a bunch of bloodletting, bloodthirsty maniacs. Is this what we mean by democratic revolution in Egypt? The Muslim Brotherhood, with tentacles all over Europe, all over the Middle East, all over North Africa, and yes, in the United States of America. Mubarak is so loathsome after all these years of embracing him, of praising him, of using him, that now we're saying this new whatever it is that's being created in Egypt, this new democracy, quote unquote, should include the Muslim Brotherhood. How far have we descended? If this is the Bush doctrine, and it's not, I reject it. The Bush doctrine wasn't aimed at allies. It was aimed at enemies. It wasn't aimed at authoritarian regime, as despicable as they are. It was aimed at totalitarian regimes. We didn't invade Egypt. We didn't invade Jordan. We asked for their help when Bush 41 correctly invaded Iraq. All Arab countries aren't the same. All Arab leaders aren't the same. No, they're not what we would like, but they are what they are. The same way they are in Latin America, in 3/4 of those countries. The same way they are in Southeast Asia, in 3/4 of those countries. You would think Egypt is the only country with an authoritarian leader who's an ally of ours. You would think it's the only country that has high unemployment, a large youth population, and can't feed itself. No, something else is going on here, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think it is? What do you think it is? What's the common denominator? It is the continuing rise of the fundamentalists, of the fanatics, of the Muslim Brotherhood types, who our administration just said is welcome in a reformed Egyptian government if it swears off violence. Swears off violence. What are they going to do, sign a piece of paper? This is one hell of a revolution in Egypt, isn't it? Have they talked about instituting capitalism so they can feed their people? No. Have they talked about a true parliamentary form of government? No. Isn't this odd? We have one conservative telling us out there we're too negative. Be positive. That's bizarre. This isn't a psychological test. We're looking at realpolitik here, ladies and gentlemen. If you think this quote-unquote revolution is going to democratize Egypt in the mid to long run or feed the people in Egypt, I think you're dead wrong. And I don't think you have one scintilla of evidence to support it. I heard somebody else say, well, are we going to stand up against tyranny or are we going to do what's in the best interests of the United States? Excuse me? What does that mean? Are we involved in this revolution? What do you mean, are we going to stand up against tyranny or do what's in the best interest of the United States? Public officials are always supposed to do what's in the best interest of the United States. That's number one. That is a straw man question. Number two, there are different types of tyranny. When your local government in the United States seizes your home because you can't afford to pay these confiscatory property taxes, that's tyranny. And yet we don't rise up and have a revolution, do we? And if your neighbor locks himself in his home and threatens to do violence and the police come, gee, who do we support, the neighbor or the police? I support the police. Am I supporting tyranny? Of course not. If that whole area of the world becomes even more fanatical than it is, if you can believe it. But I stood on my principle of democracy. Did you really? How has democracy advanced through the Muslim Brotherhood? By breeding more terrorists who hate this country, who hate the West, the Europeans, and the Israelis, who hate the Indians, who hate the Pakistanis, who hate and hate and hate because that's what the Muslim Brotherhood tells them to do. So Mubarak out and the Muslim Brotherhood in, even a little bit in the door. You think they're going to be satisfied with that? Really? What's your evidence for that? There is none. We have too many conservatives out there who don't understand what it is to be a conservative. They don't understand the history of this country. They don't understand how this country came to be. They are not well read on these matters, superficial, and they spout off, which is fine. You don't have to support every single revolution, ladies and gentlemen, that claims to be democratic, because they're all not. And if you have a revolution and it can't even define itself, we don't know exactly what it's up to, why would you support that? At a minimum, keep your mouth shut.